What's going on, guys? My name is Psyche, and this is Enter the Gungeon. This will be the roguelike that I will play for Wednesday of this week. So I've been going back and forth on this game for quite some time now. I have beaten it a couple of times, as you can see by these characters. So I guess I should kind of explain the basis of this game first for those that are unfamiliar with it. Now, in terms of roguelikes, this game definitely leans more on the bullet hell side of things, because the screen can get pretty hectic at times. Because of its 3D presentation, there's a lot more potential for enemy attacks, at least that's what I feel. We're gonna start off in the Breach. This is the main hub world, and we're gonna choose from this really colorful set of characters. We're gonna choose the Gunslinger because he's probably the most overpowered character in the game, and since I just came back to this game, so I'm feeling a little bit rusty, so I might as well just do a Gunslinger run to kind of kick things off. But essentially, the main story of this game is that all of these Gungeoneers, that's what they're called, the playable characters, they come to the Gungeon in order to obtain a gun that can kill the past, because all of these characters come here since they have some kind of regret they want to do over. Every time you reach the end of the game as each character, there will be a unique boss battle that you can go through to reach the different endings of each character. For example, I remember the Marine, I think that's what his name was. Basically, he had a regret that he abandoned his teammate during battle, so during his final fight, you basically go back to the moment and you fight that boss instead of running away. Now, normally there are only 4 playable characters, however, in updates, there is now 8, I believe. There is the Robot, there is the Bullet, and there are 2 introduced in the final patch of the game, which are the Paradox and the Gunslinger. So here I'm fighting this Mimic. Basically, every single time you open a chest, there's a chance that a Mimic pops out instead, and you gotta kill it. But also, all of the weapons in this game follow a tier system. So, as you saw there, the chest that I just got was a giant red chest, which means it had an A tier item. And then the one I just got after that was brown, so that's the lowest tier possible, which is a D tier item. However, this obviously does not mean that you have to maximize the chances of getting good items, because item tiers, just like, Dead Cells, a lot of the guns are viable. It all depends on how you use it. There are a lot of D tier items that are actually almost S tier worthy, such as the Casey. It's like a baseball bat that lets you swing around, and you can deflect enemy projectiles. And you can pretty much single-handedly win the game with that weapon alone. Because just like Binding of Isaac, what this game boasts is variety. There are so many guns and upgrades you can have in this game. Some weapons fire fast, some weapons fire slow, some weapons need you to charge it up, just like this bomb weapon that I'm using here. And the main perk of using Gunslinger is that every time you pick up a weapon, it's going to automatically receive any kind of synergies it's going to have, which gives you a pretty significant advantage. So anyways, I just cleared the first chamber. That was a no-hit boss fight. Essentially, every time you no-hit a boss, just like in Dead Cells, when you get the no-hit doors, you get to pick a legendary item. In this game, if you no-hit a boss, you get a Master Round, which is an additional reward alongside the usual upgrade or gun that you get. And it increases your maximum health by 1 heart. So as you can see, since I started with 3, now I have 4 maximum hearts. So it's definitely in your best interest to no-hit bosses. An additional mechanic that this game has over other roguelikes is the blank mechanic. So below my health, you'll see 2 little blue bullets there. Those are called blanks. What you can do is that whenever it's used, it's going to knock back all enemies near you, and it's going to clear up every single bullet on the screen for a brief moment. So it's very useful if you know that you're going to get hit, as the benefits of getting no-hit bosses in this game is just very massive. I'm gonna find a heart upgrade which further increases my health. Thing about this game is that you can't leave upgrades or guns you find on the floor. As soon as you leave the room, there is a character called the Resource Rat that just takes it from you. So every time you get a reward from clearing a room, such as ammo refills or additional guns or a key, you have to take it in that room. Otherwise, the Resource Rat will just take it from you. That being said though, there is a secret boss fight that lets you fight the rat himself. I've done it a couple times, but since it's an alternate route, it's really hard for me to go there because there are a lot of setup you have to do. But we're gonna enter the second boss fight now. If you're wondering what that little shield does at the right side of my health, those are essentially like soul hearts from Binding of Isaac. Basically, it functions the same way as a blank whenever you get hit. so it's gonna knock back enemies and projectiles just like a blank. However, it's a one-time use, though technically you can have unlimited amounts of them. We're gonna fight the second boss on this floor. This boss is called the Beholster. And if you can't tell already, there is a dodge roll mechanic just like in Dead Cells that gives you iframes whenever you use it, though you do have to time it a bit well because you cannot change directions midway. Now, in addition to a lot of guns, there are also strategies you can do in a lot of scenarios because you can technically carry unlimited guns with you throughout the run. It's really about how you mix and match them together. So for example, in this case, while the boss is alone, I am using the slingshot weapon, which has a very slow charge uptime, but it does additional damage to bosses. However, whenever he summons the enemies or the rockets, I need to switch over to something fast because I want to have that crowd control in order to deal with it effectively. Some weapons in this game are really good at killing bosses, and some of them are really good at clearing biomes. And we're gonna finish off the second boss fight, also a no-hit, so we're gonna get the second master round. I know there is an achievement for getting 5 master rounds in one run. I know it's possible, but that's just very hard. It requires you to no-hit every single boss in the game, which I imagine not a lot of people do very often. There are also really interesting strategies you can do in rooms, just like this one. So basically, if you have something that fires slow but has high burst damage, such as an RPG launcher, you can use that to clear the toughest enemy in the room before switching over to your main weapon and killing off the small fry. Just like Dead Cells, this is definitely a game where you don't want to stay in fights for too long. The longer fights get, the longer you have to dodge bullets and the more chances of something going wrong. I'm gonna open this chest, and I think this item increases my walking speed, though I can't be too sure. We're gonna find this shrine. I have no idea what the shrines in this game do, so I just did it anyways. It seemed to have taken away one of my maximum hearts, but I think it gives me a companion later on. But I could be wrong. This is a game that was introduced to me, I think, after I played Dead Cells, because like I said in previous videos, I have quit that game on and off for like 2 years because I couldn't beat 2BC, and I had to find replacements to play instead of Dead Cells, of course, and I believe this was one of them. So in terms of difficulty, I don't think the game is that difficult, at least not as hard as Dead Cells. People playing this are not too familiar with playing bullet hell games, then it might be somewhat of an issue. So I just played a mini game there that lets you fire 4 shots and you can bank them off the walls to hit the targets. The reward that you get depends on how many of the targets you hit. In this case, I actually got pretty lucky and I managed to hit all of the 4 targets, which gave me a chest that contained a S tier item, which is like this satellite thing that lets you summon down beams. I still don't know what all of the guns in this game do, so unfortunately sometimes I just have to figure them out as I go. Playing as the Gunslinger, since all synergies are available to me right when you pick up the gun, you don't really have too much decision making. I know that in the shop they can sell specific items. If you know that a synergy requires an item in the shop, you can purchase that. So most of the synergies, they just kind of add more damage onto a weapon. Sometimes they can make a really bad weapon into a fairly decent one. But against this Dreadnought boss, I'm just trying to keep my distance and fire the satellite when it's safe. As you can see, since it's an S tier weapon, it's going to do a lot of damage. And really against bosses, you really want to save your best weapons for them, because you definitely don't want to stay in there for too long. I remember there was a weapon called the Yari launcher. Essentially, it's one of the best boss killing weapons in the game. You run out of ammo in like 20 seconds, but the damage it does is huge. You can probably single-handedly clear a boss with a burst of that weapon. And just like that, we're gonna get the 3rd master round, and also pick up a bomb. Now there are active items in this game, though sometimes it's not clear whether or not they have a cooldown. Some of them are just one-time use, though the game doesn't really make that too obvious. There is a item called the Ration, which just fills up a lot of your health, but it's not certain that you only get to use it one time, because that's actually what it is, you can only use it one time. But with this bomb, some items have a cooldown that requires you to clear a room, or when a certain amount of time passes, you get to use it again. Another thing about this game is that there are a lot of references. You have stuff like Hokuto's bow from Dead Cells that references Fist of the North Star. In this game, it's literally filled with references. There are references to Metal Gear Solid. I know some anime are references here, and popular movies as well as cultural significances. But also something you can do in this game is use the environment to your advantage. So something with those pits, is that since you can't fall in them yourself, you just kind of take a point of damage, you can actually push enemies into them, and it will just instantly kill them. Some weapons are really bad, such as, I know there's a gun in the game that just shoots out water. It just pushes the enemies back and does like really minimal damage. But if you're in a room that has a lot of pits, you can basically use that to your victory because you can just push all the enemies into pits. And we're gonna fight the 4th Chambers boss. Now for those that don't know, I did mention that there are 5 master rounds in the game, so it's natural to assume that there are 5 bosses in this game. So I think at this stage, things are gonna get pretty messy, because enemies are gonna become tougher, they can sometimes predict your movement, and you really have to be careful with your resources as they are getting scarce the longer you go in your run. So in this case, because explosions actually disrupt enemy projectiles, you can kind of use that to your advantage. And I was surprised on how fast the bomb recharged. But I'm gonna use a blank here because I knew I was gonna get hit, and I don't know what is with this skull weapon, it's just doing amazing damage. But it's the last pillar now, and I'm going to switch over to a slow weapon to kind of, you know, get in some burst damage, because I think what this stage needs in order to win faster. Again, it's all about thinking ahead, it's all about kind of adapting to your situation. We're gonna get the 4th master round. And although you might think I'm doing pretty well, but mainly this is because I'm playing Gunslinger, which is probably one of the easiest, if not the easiest, character to play in the game. Though unlocking him is kind of a pain. It's been a long time since I've done this. I know to unlock the Gunslinger, you have to jump through a lot of hoops. You need to have unlocked the paradox. And then you have to do something. I think you have to restart the run, and then you have to fight a toughened version of the final boss. I believe you have to fight literally like 2 of them at the same time, which is pretty insane. But I was happy that I was finally able to unlock him because he's just really fun to play. It allows you to see the synergies that are otherwise really rare, since synergies by itself, it already requires you to know a lot of the game mechanics in order to actually achieve them. But as you can see in the final chamber, the 5th chamber, you can see how enemies are a lot more aggressive and there are a lot more projectiles you have to watch out for. And some of them, like these enemies, they can actually predict your movement and try to hit you with bullets. So for example, as soon as I walked into this room, there is a really tough enemy in the middle, so I just brought up the strongest weapon I have and try to fire a couple shots at it. You technically cannot lose if the enemy doesn't attack you in the first place, kinda just like tactics in Dead Cells. No, I would say this game is more similar to Binding of Isaac than to Dead Cells, since the real flavor of a run is really dependent on the type of items that you get. You can't really control your run as you can in Dead Cells. And also, I'm just finding out this pottery weapon kinda sucks. I know some rooms in this game have obstacles as well as puzzles you have to do, such as some platforming. And with these objects, you can actually knock them over if you press a button. You can actually knock them over like that little fire pit, and it will spread fire in the direction that you knocked it over from. And I know there are a lot less tables now, but in the beginning of the run, there were some tables you can flip. If you flip them over, you can hide behind them as cover, though they will break after a certain while. Now, a roguelike that I've been wanting to play for a while is Returnal from PS5, I think. I know that the roguelike genre is more of a indie game type of niche, so I can't really see how a AAA studio would manage to do one, so I'm kind of excited for that. And really, a lot of indie games, they have stylized graphic, but not too much like realistic graphics. And coming up to this mini-boss, yes, mini-bosses exist in this game. Their health does not show up, but you just really have to keep pumping damage into them and you should be fine. You also get some rewards, though not as much as you beat a normal boss. So here, I'm going to find a secret room. Yes, secret rooms also exist, just like Binding of Isaac. You can just keep randomly shooting at walls, and sometimes you'll see cracks in them. And once you break them to a certain point, you can use a blank to finally access the hidden passageway. Now, since the map was already revealed because of that item I got from the mini-boss, I was able to just see where the secret room is. And finally, we're gonna come up to the final boss of this game, the High Dragon. So this is where things can get a little bit intense. I still don't have a lot of its movesets completely memorized, so it might take me a while to get it, but I'm just trying to select my best guns and just try to take them out as soon as possible. But honestly, at 6 heart containers, I'm doing pretty well, I would say. I do think Enter the Gungeon is hard, but I don't think it's as hard as Dead Cells. It's got a lot of modes that can help you out, such as, I know there's like rainbow runs, where every single chest that you get will be rainbow chests, which just spews out a bunch of weapons for you to choose from. So really you can just pick the best weapons and then just kind of win with it. There are also challenge modes. I know there is a turbo mode that speeds up the enemies in the game. I know there are a few other ones. And on top of that, there are also alternative bosses. Some of them have weird entry requirements. For example, there is a room that you can enter in the first level of the game if you put out a fireplace that always appears in one of the rooms. And then you go in the fireplace to enter the hidden level. And here we're going to enter the second phase of the dragon boss fight. So he's gonna spew out this giant rings of bullets, and you just have to find these small pockets where you can roll to and avoid damage. So this is where your precision really matters. And then afterwards, he's gonna reveal this heart. You just damage it, get in as much damage as possible. Again, I'm just using my best guns to clear this quickly. He's gonna do the same thing again. Obviously, because I have a high damaging weapon, the next time I attack, I can probably kill him. But if you don't have a really strong loadout, then you really have to just keep dodging the same attack, which can kind of get annoying. And I know on turbo mode, this phase can get pretty insane because you also have to account for the bullets moving faster. So yeah, I'm gonna use this gun in the shape of a shotgun slug, which shoots out shotguns, which shoots out more slugs. I know there's also a gun in the shape of a bullet, which shoots out pistols, which shoots out bullets. So I did this off camera, but there is a shop in the 5th chamber that lets you refill your ammo, so I just did that. Now you might imagine, well, what happens now that you beat the final boss? Well, you're gonna go up this corridor, and normally you're supposed to go up to the top and find the gun that kills the past. But this time around, because I've cleared everybody's past already, I'm gonna get teleported to the 6th chamber. Yes, this is not the end of the game yet. There's still one more level to go. And this level is called bullet hell, in the literal sense. Now, this level is hard. I would say probably harder than the cavern biome from Dead Cells. Not because the enemies are hard, it's mainly that resources at this point is just so scarce. Because by the end of this level, you have to fight the final boss of the game, and they really don't give you a lot of rewards. You'll notice that enemies barely drop any hearts as well as ammo refills, so you really have to conserve your ammo at this point and just use your guns to the best of your abilities. You gotta learn how to balance it out, use the weaker guns if you think enemies are easy, and switch over to a powerful weapon if you think you're in danger. But normally on these runs, I don't actually make it this far. I know when I first started the game, I think I died on the 2nd floor actually. But it's not unusual for people to die over and over again before they get the hang of this game. One thing that I think Enter the Gungeon does better than Isaac is that there is a book that you can access from the pause menu that actually lets you see what the effects of each gun and weapons do. Because in Isaac, you kind of have to just search it up, but this is a small quality of life thing that just makes it a lot better to know what you're doing. Because I think at this stage of the run, the game is essentially like a skill check. It checks how good you are at avoiding damage, because really at this point in bullet hell, they're not gonna give you a lot of resources. And if you're wondering what those red projectiles do, basically those enemies are called jammed enemies, and they will deal an entire heart of damage to you instead of just half a heart. There are items in this game that increases your curse, so the higher curse you have, the more chances of jammed enemies spawning. And finally, we're gonna reach the very end of the run. We're gonna fight the final boss, and that is called the Lich. So again, because I saved my best weapons for this fight, I'm just gonna unload them right now. Though, when he spawns these enemies, I probably should have switched to something else, considering that I'm just making this way harder than it's supposed to be. But because some of these attacks are really hard to dodge, what you can really do is just dodge into the wall, because since you're given iframes and you can't control the direction that you dodge, you can just keep rolling into the wall if you think that you're gonna get hit. So this time around, I learned my lesson. I took out my machine gun and I'm going to just kill all these small enemies. So it's not too big of a headache. And finally, we're gonna beat the game. This is the end. And if you're wondering, well, what are we doing? Well, actually, as it turns out, this isn't actually the end of the game, because this boss, unlike some others, have multiple phases. So as you can see, we're gonna get teleported to a completely separate room now, and we're gonna fight the second phase of the Lich fight. He's gonna change forms completely, and we're gonna have to adapt to a completely different set of attacks. Again, it's been a while since I played this, so I probably get hit a couple of times. But so like the rotating lasers, you can just kind of dodge and weave. But really, the main thing about this game is to know when to use a blank, because I know blanks refill every single floor, and some people are just too stingy to use them since they think it's really rare, but really, just think of them as having additional hit points. So in this case, since the boss is really close by, I can just take out my shotgun and keep shooting at it. But if this was the previous phase, then I probably would have done this, since boss is far away, and he was a really small target. But in this case, as you can see, because of these changes, I'm adapting differently. And finally, we're gonna beat the second phase, and are we going to beat the run just yet? Well, actually, the Lich pulls a reverse Uno card, and we're gonna have to fight him one more time. So this phase has definitely the most intense bullet hell out of all the bosses I've seen. However, if you guys have ever played Touhou Project, I don't know how many of you know that, you'll know that really the bullet hell in this game isn't that bad compared to that game. I'm not too fond of bullet hells myself, but I think this is the perfect balance of fun and difficulty. But really take out my best gun and just keep shooting this giant laser at him, and it's really not too big of an issue, I would say. I don't know all of his movesets, I'm just trying to do what I can, and I do faintly recall some of these obviously, but finally, we beat him. Now, are we going to fight a fourth phase? Well, we're gonna aim this cursor at him and we're gonna shoot. And that is the end of the game. So this is normally where the credits show up, but for some reason the aspect ratio is a bit weird. We're gonna view the final cutscene of us killing the Lich, and we're falling into the ocean apparently. But yeah, this has been Enter the Gungeon. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed it. It's definitely a different genre of roguelikes, I would say. It's more leaning towards the bullet hell side of things. But overall, I really enjoyed this game, and I still play it from time to time. But anyways, that's gonna do it for me guys, and I will see you tomorrow for the last game we're gonna play this week, Hades. So until then, thanks for watching guys.